Well, happy Saturday, folks. Normally I do the updates on Sunday, but as I mentioned last week, I'm going to be at the, I've got an angry kitty, at the demobilization ceremony in Medford tomorrow for the 186th that drills out of the National Guard Armory over in Coos Bay. So instead of doing it tomorrow after I've been on the road a bunch, I figure I'll do the update today. Some of what's going on this week. A lot of meetings, informational meetings I had on Friday from the Association of Counties getting ready for different committees, one of which being Legislative Committee. We have the short session coming up. So that is long session for the legislature is kind of a marathon. The short session is a sprint. They operate for 35 days. Each legislator only gets 2 bills, and they try and slam through everything as best they can within those 35 short days. And previously, back in the 90s, it's my understanding there used to only be the long session. And now you've got the short one as well that's turning into its own version of the long session, I hear. But nobody sleeps. So we'll be keeping up to date as commissioners on what bills are coming forward, when there needs to be testimony from the commissioners. Folks might remember last year there was a real short notice that some of us had to be at the Capitol when the state tried to change, well, something failed. They tried to do it a different way, and they tried to cut out anybody that's not the state in terms of the revenues for the transportation. So a lot of us had to be there real fast, happened to be there. This time, probably not going to get a lot of 3-hour notifications, probably a little more, but it's possible in the coming month or so that I'm going to need to make some shots up to Salem on short notice. But that's something we do as commissioners. Or we can testify online, but it's not as impactful. And round trip to Salem isn't that bad. I've done it plenty of times. In the briefs, probably the big thing that stood out to me, the big thing that was really focused on that wasn't general but was specific, is an attempt that's going to happen this one to reallocate money away out of the marijuana tax dollars that come to cities and counties and put it towards the CJC, Criminal Justice Commission at the state. Looks at criminal justice reform, this sort of thing, but it's an existing entity. So I'm not sure why they need to take more money out of cities and counties to do that. But it's a thing that it will come up, but we're going to push back on it because it's fine if they want to work on things, but not at the expense of local governments, not at the expense of the entities working with the people directly, our citizens. We've got signed a letter this week supporting the business plan for the Port of Coos Bay. They've got a plan in place trying to become stable again, changes they're going to make to the structure, to where their investments are, and it's it was over a 200-page document. So if somebody's interested, they can look up the business plan for the Port of Coos Bay. Nutshell, I read through it, I support it, I was at the meeting where they presented it, so sent that off. Similar to that, or related to that, the state's Prosperity Council members were announced this week. It's a group the governor put together to try and undo some of what's been done that's made Oregon unfriendly to businesses. CNBC ranked Oregon 39th in the nation. There was a different study I had looked at that put it closer to 47th or 50th in that bottom 5, definitely. So somewhere between those, I imagine. But yeah, that council was announced. Looking at it, and I've talked with this week David Brock Smith and Court Boyce, our state senator and state house rep, respectively, for a good portion of our county, gave an update to the commissioners. One of the things that came up was that council, looking at the roster. When I went through, Googled who these people are, where their businesses are, I-5 centric, obviously, particularly Portland centric. No one on the coast south of Tillamook, and even then I think the CEO of Tillamook Creamery, who I believe is based out of Portland. And then nothing at all that I saw east of the Cascades. So not even Bend, and certainly nothing past Bend going east. So as you might imagine, I've got objections to the structure of that body, and had been asking ahead of time how people get involved with that group. The group itself, I believe, is being led by the CEO of the Port of Portland, which has been failing year after year, and talking with people in the customs side about ports. It's due to the management of that port. But yeah, a lot of things to make me not feel good about that Prosperity Council plan. And that talking with other folks that operate in and around Salem, it's kind of regarded as a joke even by our own team. So, not optimistic on the Governor's Prosperity Council. I would like to see some changes. We'll see what happens with it. Where did I have that? Had that. Oh, one of the members on the Prosperity Council also is actually in San Diego. They're not an Oregonian, which, here or there. Was on Camperry's show this week, radio show, talking about Oregon's criminalization of mental illness, systemic criminalization of mental illness. It's a thing I've talked about many times. The real short version is the state is saving something like $1,600 a day if somebody goes to prison instead of the state hospital. State hospital, the bed's $1,777 and some change a night. State prison, $173, I think, per night. So, talked about that. Talked about the way the expense is pushed onto county jails, because usually the folks in these conditions are having behavioral issues that are disruptive and problematic, but not 365-day plus sentences that would send you to prison, so the individual ends up in the jail. January of last year, we had 46 people in the jail one night, and 28 were on mental health meds. There were 11 that were homeless before they were put in the jail, and 10 of them were on mental health meds, so demonstrating the consequences of the state's under management of the state hospital. Some good news there. The state had tried to solve that by pushing the overflow onto counties, not guaranteeing enough funds to do it, and not indemnifying us against the legal consequences of the state's mismanagement of the state hospital for decades now. They're being fined by the federal government, is the quick version. That has been resolved. So we got our copy of our CFAA, the Mental Health Agreement, for funding. I got a copy of it Friday, so yesterday. So I'm still going through it, but I already saw in the early part we are indemnified. That was a big concern, because the state's accruing a fine of $500 a day per person per day in excess of 7 days they're waiting to get into the state hospital to be assessed to stand trial, and we did not want those fines. And then I've got to read through more of it, but I have been told it's acceptable, so I have to assume that we've got... I did see that there's no requirement for us to build residential housing, which would suggest that we're off the hook for taking the overflow from the state hospital as well. I'll acknowledge here, it would be best practice for these individuals to be served locally. That is absolutely true. And in an ideal world, that would have been done, started around 2004 when that plan was rolled out by the state. They said they were going to reduce state hospital capacity, invest in local care. It would work out. They decreased the state hospital, did not adequately invest in local care, and it brought us to where we are today. Today is not very good. So it was hard to believe they would do it when they said it this time as well. But hopefully we'll get to a better point. Somebody I trust more. Let's see. did reach out to Representative Mannix's office. He's got the Oregon Crime Fighting Act moving forward. This requires people to be held, I believe it was pretrial sentencing. The part that interested me was actually that it requires the state to compensate for the nights the individual is in the jail waiting to go to court for that purpose. So right now, the state is not compensating for the jail beds. That's one of the reasons that the mental health issue directly impacts the local government and public safety issue. It's because the jail is being used as an emergency health facility generally, which is not what they want to be. It's not what we want them to be. And I've never known an officer that said they went into law enforcement because they wanted to be a therapist. It's just a consequence of how the state has handled mental health and the state hospital. This would cause the state to actually encounter financial burden for the consequences of those actions. Right now, it's all general fund. We're putting money into the jail system to try and accommodate, compensate for the consequences of the state's decision on mental health. This requires them to pay, I think it was either $140 per night or the actual expense of housing the individual. That's a big deal. It also says that if the capacity of the jail is over 90% for more than 30 days, the state is required to receive the individuals and plan for their accommodations. That would bail out the problem we've got with the jail in Coos County. The fine details of funding would be interesting. It would be new. That's always a challenge, but if solutions were easy, we wouldn't have problems. But it does open the door for a situation where the state does have a vested financial interest in local government outcomes for jails when they are a consequence of where the state has avoided expense elsewhere. So it deters the state from passing the buck, which would be very nice. I've been still working on getting some data from the Oregon State Troopers regarding mission set, allocation formula, and actual calls responded to. I'd like to compare those to what our deputies responded to. So the number, Captain Sanborn provided me a report. I want to say, what was it? It was like 20,000 calls responded to last year. Oh, big numbers. Definitely well over 100 calls a day responded to by our deputies. Feel like it was 500, but I'm just going off memory right now because it came to me now instead of when I was writing my little notes. But it's a ridiculous number that our deputies respond to. And it's my opinion, the state troopers are supposed to have 14 officers or troopers here. That's what they're allocated. They have 9. They have not had 14 at least since before the 90s when some of our officers started in the region. I was told last time I brought this up that 5 were in training. So now it's 3 in training last I heard, which if it happens would bring them to 12. This isn't something I blame the staff of the OSP for. I don't blame the state troopers for that situation. It comes again to a matter of funding, resource allocation. Examples of where I see inefficiency really is the best one I've got right now is around this mental health contract we just negotiated as counties. The state, on 3 different occasions, gave ultimatum deadlines. Every time, 36 of 36 counties said no. The state wasted 7 months of their staff's time and our staff's time arguing with us over whether or not we should be liable for the consequences of their actions. We should be the ones to solve the problems they created, and that we should do it without them giving us the money necessarily. It is a stupid thing to have had to fight over and waste 7 months of everyone's time on. But that is what happened. How that relates to OSP, I have no idea, but that's why the description says tangents. Talked to someone, a resident reached out about deed protections just to deal with ongoing threat of fraudsters and scams. That's something I'm looking into, is how do we put a freeze on a title maybe, or what can we do? That'll be information the clerk tells me about. The clerk is also an elected, that's Julie, and she'll tell me what I should know about this thing, and we'll see what's there where we can protect our residents against scams and fraud. I've got a number of bills that I sent over to Senator David Brock Smith. I had to think. He used to be a House rep. Now he's a senator. I just saw him. Like I said, they can only submit 2 bills in the short session each, but pieces can be added into other bills, and he is extremely good at that. We are fortunate to have him as a senator for our district. And then he also serves alongside Senator Anderson and House Rep Boomer, right? But yeah, I sent over to him some stuff. Short version, RV fees are distributed inequitably throughout the state. Counties with no qualifying RV slots, in some cases, have ended up with more money than Coos County does, where we have 500 qualifying slots. So trying to address that. Month or 2 into my tenure as commissioner, somebody reached out to me. Their house had burnt down. They wanted to rebuild the house as it was with the infrastructure it had, and they were told by the state inspectors that they needed a new system for their, I think, septic, and it would cost them an additional $40,000. The person's house just burnt down. They probably don't have a spare $40,000 on top of whatever insurance gives them. Insurance doesn't necessarily give you the money to upgrade your property when the old one burns down. So something proposing that you be able to rebuild in the state that it was. Requests for studies around what happened since the 2004 blueprint for action that the state passed regarding mental health, downsizing the state hospital, increasing community care, looking at what the outcomes of that actually were. Study on mental health prevalence in jails, and looking at data moving back and forth, people that have come out of the state hospital ending up in jail as capacity in the state hospital has decreased over time. Complex things would be interesting to know. Study on youth substance abuse in Oregon. So we have one of the worst rates of youth substance abuse in the nation, according to the Mental Health Association of America. And in probably 5 years ago, a community health needs analysis by Bay Area Hospital showed we have a disproportionate number of youth, specifically in Coos County, who go from being clean, sober, to meth or heroin, fentanyl. They just skip over the introductory drugs that you normally would see, you would expect to see. Those aren't there. They're going straight to the hard stuff. So figuring out why Oregon has this massive problem relative to the other states. I get told sometimes, well, this is a national problem. And it is a national problem. But that's not a reason for us to be 49th in the nation. National problem? Sure. Why are we last still? Some stuff around pay equity for district attorneys. Metro counties receive more money to compensate their district attorney from the state than rural counties do. That doesn't make sense. A district attorney is a district attorney. So something to fix that so that other counties receive that same amount of funding. A study of the administrative costs of the state when it comes to providing money to local governments. So how much money are we spending by having so many funding streams broken up into restricted buckets and tracking those buckets instead of doing lumped together money going to local governments who can spend it on the things they know their community needs, not the things that the state says they think we need. and services study. So a request that the state look at what it is legally obligated to do for the people, assessing where it is in terms of national performance in those areas, and then looking at what it would like to do. What that might look like in terms of where it would land, I don't know, but it would be, I think, useful, if nothing else, that the state look at what it is required to do as a government and how it is actually performing. How do we keep our citizens sober and healthy versus why are we 49th for youth substance abuse? And the last one related to that is just kind of a data plink. I send out emails sometimes and I just label them trivia to our department heads. I'm going to say it wrong maybe. Looking at data within our county around the condition torticollis. I think I said it right. That is a condition where the child's head is kind of stuck to one side or the other. It's just kind of floppy, and it is not every child that has torticollis had parents on meth, but parents on meth are far more likely to have a child with torticollis. So looking at data around torticollis in Coos County, what is its rate of prevalence, where do we stand related to other areas, and is that healthcare data that we can use to pursue money not just for healthcare needs, but also preventative measures to help people get sober when they have children on the way, or while they're bearing children, or preferably at any point they could not be doing meth would be nice. I've got a lot of friends that ended up in a lot of bad places because of it. And that is all the stuff on that list. I am still, even now, typing up all the stuff we've accomplished in this first year. You know, you look back and think, yeah, I don't know if I did that much. And then you start typing the list and things get carried away a little bit. So probably have to shorten it a little. It's going to be a post, not a video, because I talk long enough on these weekly updates. You don't need to listen to me talk about a whole year. And yeah, that'll wrap that up. There won't be an update tomorrow because we did this one today. I'll be in Medford for a chunk of it. Demobilization ceremony for our National Guard unit here. And we will see y'all later. Bye.